Hi, everyone. It's Marcy here from PNS and Nina, and I have one of my notary besties on the other side today, Michele Riley from Alabama. Michele, thanks for joining me today. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's good to see you again, Marcy, and thank you for inviting me to have this chat with you.
I love having you on. For everybody out there, I'm going to do a quick aside. I met Michele years and years and years ago at an NNA conference, and she's become one of my best notary friends out here. So if you're thinking about going to a conference and wondering why you should go, it's the people. It's the people above everything else. You're going to make some great friends and you're going to learn a lot of good stuff, but you're going to meet people who are like-minded, like you are, obviously, and you're going to walk away with friendships that you'll have for years down the road. So that's my digression for today. Michele from Alabama, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us what you do, who you are, what's going on over there.
Sure. As you can tell from the accent, I'm not a native Alabamian, but I've been here in Alabama since 2004. And it took about a year for me to learn about the notary world. The employer I was working for insisted that I become a notary, and for my 9 to 5 job, and I got hooked. And so I've been commissioned now for about 19 years. Um, I have been a notary signing agent, mobile notary. I even started my own little notary business. But in 2013, Marcy, I felt like I had learned enough to start sharing information with other notaries. So I started a small company. It's a sole proprietorship called Notaries for Alabama. And I'm really happy about it because the mission of the company is to help Alabama residents become successful Alabama notaries. And, in short, I do training and mentoring, educating, and I get to meet a lot of great men and women here in Alabama.
And we love that. And that's part of what we're talking about today. So let's talk about absentee ballots. Now, it doesn't matter what state you're in, it's still good information to have because not every state requires absentee ballots to be notarized. Am I correct in saying that? Because here in New York, we don't.
You're absolutely correct. I was surprised to find out it was needed here in Alabama. So it is a state to state requirement.
Now, off the top of your head, what states do you know do require those ballots to be notarized?
Off the top of my head, way to put me um, on the spot here. Now, what's interesting, Marcy, is I identified, I'm going to say, well, Alabama, Missouri, Alaska.
Oh, Alaska. That's interesting.
I know. South Dakota, Mississippi, and Oklahoma. I don't know if I said Oklahoma. But what's interesting, Marcy, is most of those states indicate that the ballot needs to either be notarized or witnessed by two individuals. So it's kind of a either or. So I don't want to say always a notary, but that is an option.
All right. Well, if you're in a state that we missed or we don't know about, make sure you drop that in the comments so that we can get back to you. What I hear about those states in particular is coincidentally, they all have some very rural areas to them, which makes me wonder if that's not part of it. So every year, without fail, every election time, I shake my head. There is some story 1, 2, 5, 10 about how there was some sort of fraud, right? Or the notary didn't see the person, or someone isn't allowed to run for office because the notary didn't do a good job on their, on the petitions they collected. And it's not the same as absentee ballots, but it's all in that space of hear about it, right? Every single time. Why do you think that is? What do you think is the disconnect between doing the notary piece, right, when it comes to election time correctly? Is it just, you think people just aren't aware of what they need to do because it's only, it's so, I guess, I don't want to say random, but it's not commonplace that somebody coming to you with, a mortgage or a deed or a power of attorney. You see that all the time. Maybe, like you said, you didn't know that Alabama required it. I mean, do you think that's the case? People just aren't aware or don't know. Notaries aren't familiar.
I think that's the real issue, Marcy, more so than anyone. I don't believe folks are out there doing it deliberately, especially not notaries. It's not being familiar. You tell me, well, again, you're in a state where you don't have to notarize the ballot or the affidavit. But I've only been asked to do in 19 years, maybe three.
Okay. That's not a
Maybe
big number.
it isn't. And I mean, compare this with doing a reverse mortgage closing. A lot of notary signing agents haven't done that yet. When you're doing a notarization for the first time, you're not familiar with the documents, you're more apt to make mistakes. And that's what got me worked up this year. A member of my notary community shared with me, she is for one county, she is the absentee election manager, and she's also a notary. And she said, Michele, in the primary election, significant number of ballots could not be counted because of notary mistakes.
Okay.
Not
Wait a minute. I make you repeat that because that is shocking to me. Repeat that last statement to me again.
a significant number of ballots from the primary election in 2024 could not be counted. I'm speaking of Alabama because of notary mistakes.
Well, that's just astounding to me, right? And what a black mark on the notary community in Alabama. Did they give you some sort of indication as to what the most common of mistakes were or what was actually wrong? I knew you know. All right, tell us what they are.
Yes. So the number one thing was, it sounds minor. So get ready. I know you are not going to be happy to hear this, Marcy. Notaries leaving off their commission expiration date. Notaries either applying their seal and not signing their name, or signing their name and not applying their seal. Um, those were the two most common.
So that just calls into question notary basics, right? I mean, we know as notaries, sign and stamp go together, right? Unless you're in a state that doesn't require stamping. So, like here in New York, you're not required to have a notary stamp. I have a notary stamp because I'm lazy and I don't want to write in all the information, but that's the option. If I sign as a notary, I have to write in all my commission, information if I'm not going to use a stamp. But for most states, right, sign, you stamp. Like that's the order in which things get done. Doesn't it seem odd that that would be a problem? Which lends the question of, is it notaries who are new, or is it notaries who don't do this every single day? They have their commission because their employer asked them to get it and they only do it once or twice a year. Or, as you said, is it non-familiarity for the document, or is it just not double checking your work when you're done? Because we're all human, we all make mistakes, right?
And then keep in mind, here in Alabama, there has never been mandatory notary training. There is now, as of September 1, 2023, we do have some limited requirements, so that's going to help. But imagine all of these years, all we had to do is request to be commissioned, pay a few fees, and we were able to start stamping. So yeah, there are a lot of notaries still with bad habits, um, notarizing signatures.
Now, in terms of the declining of those ballots, do they then turn them over to your governing entity and be like, hey, look at this notary, like, look at the mistake that they made, someone should reach out? Because, well, I'm gonna let you answer that. I'm gonna tell you why I'm asking that in a minute. Did anyone notify any of these notaries?
I can't speak for all counties. We have 67 counties. I don't know, but I don't think so. I think I would have heard through the grapevine. And you know what? Here in Alabama, voting is just one, granted, probably the most important responsibility of our counties to manage. So I get it. It's like we gotta count. We gotta do, look at the ones that were done correctly.
But how disheartening for that individual who took the time to go ahead, who wanted to cast their ballot, who got their ballot notarized to send it off. I mean, that's a disservice to that individual, right? Voting is for a lot of us, it's an obligation and a privilege for us, right? I've been voting every year since I was 18. Even when I'm like, I don't like anybody, but I'm voting anyway. I still feel the obligation. It is disheartening. It is a disservice in my mind, and you tell me if I'm wrong, that those notaries aren't made aware of the consequences of their actions, because how will they know going forward?
Right.
Maybe they really don't know. Maybe they weren't aware. That person now thinks, hey, I voted in this election. Yay, right? And we say every vote counts. And now if there's a significant number, right, is what you said to me, a significant number of ballots that aren't being allowed to be counted and, put into the process, that just seems wrong. No,
I,
am I wrong in thinking that?
you're definitely not wrong because that was one of my questions, and it still doesn't sit well with me. That I would like for that incorrect affidavit because it's not the actual ballot that's getting notarized, as I'm sure you can imagine, but it is a separate affidavit form that gets signed and notarized. I'm like, well, yeah, let's send that back to the notary with the write up, and or better yet, give the voter an opportunity to vote again. I mean,
Oh, I didn't think about that, but that's a great point. And I'm glad that you brought up the affidavit, because not everyone would know. I didn't think about that either. So you're correct in saying that. I hope they're all issuing an oath when they're taking that affidavit into consideration. And I asked if they were being told, because I see that here a lot in New York. I'll get phone calls or emails about this notary did X, Y, Z, and it's a problem. And I'm always like, but did you report that? Did you tell somebody? And they say, well, no. Okay, but if what you think did was particularly heinous or damaging to that individual, and you've approached them about it and they're not willing to take that into consideration or make adjustments, you should report them. Why allow them to continue doing that and harm other individuals in the process? Or we just talked about, make us look bad because now everyone's like, oh well, notaries, they don't know how to notarize absentee ballots. And based on this conversation, it sounds like most of them don't. Do you think that that would be helpful, or maybe to put instructions or something along with that affidavit? Are there instructions? I don't know. Do they say here, hey, make sure that you do X, Y, Z and sign your name and stamp, right? And would that help? Do you think? No one really reads, so I'm probably going off on a tangent here for a minute, but
I think it would help. Uh, Currently, there is an instruction sheet that gets mailed with the ballot, just not, there's no focus on the notary section.
all right, that makes sense.
And yes, there are efforts underway to improve that or to add that.
That's amazing. Now, is that based on information that you've given them or that they've seen? Like, how did that come about? Because that's the next part of the conversation is how do we make changes to these things? Like, who do we talk to? can we make changes? This seems like a big thing to
It
try to
is.
get promoted, right, or changed.
Oh, it definitely is. And um, we weren't able to get anything changed in time for this 2024 general election, but I'm hoping in the next 4 years there will be something different. I mean, it really does come down to awareness first. And so I figured in the meantime, what could I do? And it is easier. I have more influence with notaries than I do the real big,
Yeah.
the Secretary of State's office and
Mhm.
probate and all. So that's where I'm focusing on and have been focusing on for the last few months is getting the word out to Alabama notaries on how to correctly notarize this affidavit. And most notaries that hear about this, I mean, they're shocked. They're like, I had no idea. And I'm like, I get it. If you don't know, you don't know.
Right.
So,
I was surprised to hear it, right? And again, I don't it seems like it's just a small handful of states where this, is required. Although again, like we talk about it, we hear about it in the national news though, right? There's always a conversation around candidates and elections and all of the things. So I certainly don't think it's something that we're not aware of as, you know, individuals necessarily, but I wonder how we could make this easier or a more prominent issue for notaries in the states that they are. So I know that you put all this information together because it was, important for you. But I would love to hear how it was received by the notaries that you gave this information to. You told me that they were surprised, and I guess I'm not surprised to hear that, but was it well received? Were they happy to know? Are they all in on helping getting these changes made going forward?
absolutely. The feedback has been very positive. I hosted a Zoom similar to this, going through the form, explaining it, and I now have a video on my YouTube channel, not only for Alabama notaries, but again, you probably know how easy it is to go down a rabbit hole. In
So easy.
working on the video to train Alabama notaries, I was like, okay, what are other states doing? So while I didn't get into the weeds for those other states, I was like, you know what? Just let me comment on Mississippi and all just to get the word out. And the views on those videos have been very encouraging. So the word is getting out. And then I also self published a real small paperback book. It's out on Amazon books, explaining again the whole absentee mail-in process for Alabama notaries specifically.
Well, make sure you send me the links both to your YouTube channel and for your book on Amazon, because we'll add that into this video for anybody who's watching who's interested. That would be great. And Michelle's always super available. So if you have any questions, I'm just going to throw her under the bus here. If you have any questions and anything else, Michelle's happy to help you out. You don't need to be in Alabama. She's a great resource for you. Um, do you think that this will become a greater issue as I don't want to get political here, but as it seems like the political arena has become a little more contentious as we've gone along, right? Do you think that there'll be more of a crackdown on some of these things? Because we really want to make sure that, people are voting and they're getting their votes in and there's no fraud. Like, I know this has probably been ongoing for a while. It's not new, it's not a new topic, but we seem about hearing it more lately. And I think that's because of how politics is sort of rolling out. Do you think that this will be more controversial as we go? And do you think that notaries will suffer uh, recourse and consequence when they do these kinds of things and the ballot is rejected?
So two things. Um, I am still shell shocked from the election in 2000, Bush versus Gore, when we were hearing about the hanging chads during the recount. So, to answer your question, yeah, I think that due to the current climate, if the parties find out a significant number of mail-in absentee ballots that required witnessing or notarization were not done properly because of human error, it could be very embarrassing for the
Mhm.
notary community as a whole. And God forbid, I mean, I would hate to be the poster child for the reason why ballots in Alabama couldn't be counted. And we have seen that type of behavior where civil servants or volunteers have been inappropriately targeted because folks felt that they were up to no good. You follow me with social
Yes.
media and
And
all?
outside of just the political arena, we see it now in things like the Graceland controversy, right? These big,
Yes.
we saw it back with, I can't think of the name of it now. It was a big deal where the notary wasn't there. I can't think of the name of it, but we've seen these big, celebrity type cases where there's been something not right regarding the notary necessarily, right? And that notary's name is now out there.
Yes.
And that is just reputation wrecking, right? And I'm not laughing at that. I'm just saying it is, we are in an environment where it's so instantaneous for information and for news, sometimes without total due diligence, right? And a lot of times these notaries have been found to have not been the reason why, right? Sometimes they certainly are, but sometimes they are not. It was a simple mistake, or they just got caught up in something that they did all of their due diligence on their side, but somebody else was fraudulent, or there's another thing that came about that way. So yeah, I'm with you that just it seems like it could be difficult for everybody all around.
And yet so easy to prevent. And it starts with notaries being willing to admit we're not perfect. We don't know everything, but we need to always be willing to learn. Going to taking one notary class at the beginning of your notary career is not sufficient. We have to continue to do almost, even if CEUs or credits aren't mandatory, we should be looking for opportunities to reinforce that original training. I think you and I know we make an effort to attend the National Notary Association's annual conferences because I always leave with something new. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know always, and it benefits me. But if you can't do that, do it locally. Attending, I was on your website. I want to sign up for the anatomy of a reverse mortgage. There was another Zoom webinar schedule. I was like, yeah, I want to go to that too because laws change, requirements change, documents change, and we need to know about it before we get to the signing table. We really should.
And we learn, like, you don't know what you don't know, right? So a lot of times, I don't care how long we've been doing this, even me, there are days where I'm like, I just recently said to someone, I just learned something completely new about how you charge a notary fee, right? Like I always thought if it was two signers, but one acknowledgement, and they were both in there, that here in New York, I charged $2 and was done. The state was like, no, Marcy, it's $4. And I'm like, but it's only one notarial block. They're like, yeah, that's okay, but it's two people, right? And I was like, okay. Now, I mean, it's $4, so it's not like I've been losing out a ton of money over the years, but that was how I was taught. That's how, and I wasn't the only person when I brought this up. Half the people I spoke to were like, "What? We always thought it was that way too." So it's not one of those things where sometimes the laws are not clear, right? Most notary laws in most states are not black and white. Some states don't even have a handbook, right? They just have like a little pamphlet. Here you go, figure it out on your own. Look at the case law. So I'm in agreement that education is critical. I'm going to say, please don't do like the Facebook University thing. People are very wanting to be very helpful on there, but you still need to, no matter where you get your information, even if it's me, even if it's Michelle, you still want to go back and double check, right? You should be your own fact checker. So go to people that you think are expert in their field or have knowledge, and then take that information and go double check, because we can be wrong at times too, right? I've certainly never been 100% correct in everything I've ever said, but yeah, education is key. Um, to to go back to this ballot issue again, do you think that that's part of the reason why so many states don't require ballots to be notarized? Because of, and I know this is just going to be me and you talking hypothetically, but I wonder if that's not a piece of it, right? Well, it's hard to find a notary, or they're not in an area, or we just don't want to discount someone's vote because the error that the notary made. Is that a possibility, do you think?
It is, Marcy. And I mean, the whole voting, it's, if you know US history, you know that this is such a hot topic. So the short answer is yes to your question. And I don't even want to get into the longer response, but the other states recognize the more requirements you layer on to voting, it can discourage Americans from voting.
Hmm.
And no one should like that. Okay. I don't care. I think, Marcy, this is the one of the reasons why we're friends. I don't care who you vote for. You don't have to vote for my candidate. I just want you to vote. And I
Sure,
want
100%.
your vote to count the same way my vote counts. So, yeah, I think the other states are about, okay, you all, since I think many states are of the opinion voter fraud is not at the level of being dangerous. So let's err on the side of ha- having more votes placed and pull out the bad ones and keep it moving.
Now, uh, that brings up another point, in that, do you think the states that require notarization or have it as an option on their apps will move away from that based on what they're seeing with notarial errors? Is it a possibility that they're like, you know what, this isn't working? Like, we're throwing away all these ballots, we're not counting them, we're having all these issues because the affidavit isn't being notarized properly. Let's just waive that all together.
I will say, I'm going to say yes. That's a reluctant yes, but just with me,
All of this is hypothetical for everyone watching. We're just having this conversation because this isn't only about ballots, right? This pertains to a lot of different documents out there, and that's why I'm bringing it up, right? Here in New York, there was affidavits to court. They waived the requirement. Now they don't need to be notarized because they felt it was, and you see that a lot in a lot of states now. They felt like it was a barrier for those who are indigent, right? For the poor. But I also think that there was part of it was just the notarial piece of it, right? Them not being done properly, then it getting rejected. And then this person who maybe could barely have afforded the 5 or 10 or $25 to start with now has to get it redone, and maybe they can't. So that's why I asked, go ahead with your response is,
I want to talk about California. So when I was working on this project recently about states that require a notarized affidavit, California was on the list as being one of those states. And so I did my research. I started recording these YouTube videos, and I found out that California recently did away with the notarization requirement. So, to your point, yes, I think over time we'll see more states pull back and maybe just rely on a witness
mhm.
and not a formal notarization. And then in time, hopefully, because now in California, from what I understand, they just mail ballots to everybody who is registered, and it's up to the voter to decide, Do I want to mail it in? Do I want to walk it in? Do I want to go to the polls? What's going to work for my schedule
Mhm.
this election? And I really like that, having options.
I do too. So if you have one key tip for notaries out there that are in states that the absentee ballot affidavit has to be notarized, what would you tell them?
Wow.
I'm putting you right on the spot
You
here.
really did. If one takeaway for someone who is in the states affected by this requirement, which is to please review your state's laws pertaining to notarizing the ballot affidavit before you pick up your notary seal. So get the information, make sure you know how to properly notarize the document before using your notary seal.
And where would they go? Like the Board of Elections? Who does it depend on this state? Like where? I don't know. Is every state a little bit different? Is that the best place to go? Where do they go?
It does depend on their state. In some states, it is the Secretary of State office. As you mentioned, the Board of Elections. And you could just Google your state's name, absentee ballot, and it
All
will
right.
take you right there.
Google is our friend. Michele, this was so informative. Thank you so much for coming on with me today. I so appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I always enjoy speaking with you. I mean that.
I know, me too. I hope everyone watching this video got some good content or information from it. We'll make sure to put in the comments Michele's link to her book and to her YouTube channel. Subscribe to us, subscribe to her. More is better, right? And it's not all just New York content or Alabama content. We like to think that we cover a full range of things. Notary best practice really is notary best practice. It's not always state specific. It's all the important things, right? So if I'm going to end this video with saying double check, double check, double check, right? There is no harm in telling someone, I just need 1 minute of quiet so I can make sure that I got all of this right so that your vote counts or your document gets recorded or whatever it might be. Double checking is the number one notary tool that you all have in your tool bag. Thank you again, Michele. Thank you everyone for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day.